Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. You guys know that usually on Wednesdays I record a full podcast that is 100% dedicated to college basketball. And unfortunately, I actually had my first day of work on Wednesday, and that's why there was no college basketball podcast being recorded. But I figured, you know what, since I missed Wednesday's podcast, why don't we just, spread out today's show, spend one segment on each sport, and talk some college basketball. So the main college basketball storyline I wanted to talk with you guys today. And next week, we're going to cover everything. Yamani Bates committing to Michigan State. That was a huge commitment by him. We also had McCurr committing to Howard. I'm going to be going over all of those news next week. There's going to be a ton of stuff to talk about. But there is one specific topic I wanted to talk about on today's show, and that is this. On, I believe it was Tuesday, I was listening to John Rothstein's College Hoops Today podcast, and he had Brad Underwood on. If you don't know Brad Underwood, he's actually the current head coach of the Illinois Fighting Illini. And when you look at the Illini, this past season was their best season in a really long time. I was pretty high on them in the preseason, but they finished even better than I expected. And two guys that had a lot to do with that are Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn. These were the two best players on Illinois' team last year. Ayo is one of the best guards in the country. Kofi is one of the best big men in the country. And I'll say this: if they both do come back to school, that is probably the best inside-outside duo in all of college basketball. Could you maybe throw Jalen Suggs and Philip Petrusev? Maybe, but I think Ayo and Kofi might be really up there in terms of just those two players. Illinois also returns Trent Frazier, a senior, and Georgi Bashanishvili, a junior, who have both played a lot of basketball throughout their career in Champaign. And it's funny because if you remember Ayo Dosunmu, and if you followed his college basketball career since he graduated high school, he was a top 30 recruit in the class of 2018. And he committed to Illinois, had a really good freshman year, and I was kind of the belief, and this was before I even knew that Kofi Cockburn was that good. I was basing all this philosophy around Ayo, around Trent Frazier, and around Georgi Bashanishvili, who had a very good freshman year as well, and the fact that Brad Underwood usually is a pretty solid coach. You guys remember all the good work he did at Stephen F. Austin, leading them to back-to-back NCAA tournaments. You remember they had that crazy run when they beat VCU on that N1 three-pointer at the end of regulation. The following year, they made the NCAA tournament and lost to Utah. The year after that, they made it again, and they smacked West Virginia as a 14 seed, and then that's when they lost to Notre Dame when Matt Farrell had that crazy tip-in, and then Brad Underwood actually ended up leaving to go to Oklahoma State and then Illinois. But when you look at this Illini team, Ayo Dosunmu was pretty good his freshman year. He was really good this past year, his sophomore year. He was one of the best guards in all of college basketball. This past year, we all know just how talented the Big Ten was. When you look at not only how many good teams there were, but also how many good players there were. When you look across the league, Caleb Wesson, Cassius Winston, Anthony Cowan, Jalen Smith, Geo Baker, Daniel Oturu, Nate Reavers, Trace Jackson Davis, Lamar Stevens, Xavier Simpson, John Teskey, Luka Garza, Ayo Dosunmu, Kofi Cockburn, Travion Williams. There were just so many good players in the Big Ten throughout all of last season, and Ayo Dosunmu was on the top of that list. But here's the thing. A lot of those guys are gone. Xavier Simpson, John Teskey, gone. Cassius Winston, gone. Anthony Cowan, gone. Jalen Smith, gone. Daniel Oturu, most likely gone. He might even be officially gone. I'm not 100% sure, but Lamar Stevens as well, gone. So there are a lot of really good players that have announced, okay, we're definitely going pro, and we are not coming back to play college basketball in the Big Ten next year. There are plenty of players like that. And with that being said, I actually, to be honest with you guys, kind of thought that Ayo Dosunmu of Illinois was going to be in that same boat. If you remember, he was one of the last guys to confirm last year during the NBA draft process. He was one of the last guys to confirm that he was coming back to school. And when you combine that, you combine the freshman season he had, you combine the fact the way his body's built, he's like 6'3", 6'4", really athletic guard that could shoot. He's a pleasure to watch, really good guarding the defensive on the defensive side of the ball as well, and he was really good during his sophomore season as well. Last year, this was a guy that averaged 16.6 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, 3.3 assists per game, about 1 steal per game, only 2.5 turnovers per game, 75% from the line, and 30% from three. You would probably want him to increase the three-point shot a little bit if he comes back. But the bottom line is this guy was going to be a first-round pick. And I think he is going to be a first-round pick if he decides to enter the NBA draft. And it's funny because usually over the last couple years, and I've spoke about it a lot on this show, the trend in college basketball is to get these guys to the NBA as quickly as possible. And you guys know like how I feel about that. That's not the best move for the player's best interest in the long term. I totally understand for guys like Zion Williamson or, Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Davis, the one and done rule is probably the best way to go and you're going to get paid instantly. But those guys are ready to play in the NBA really right away. You could tell when you watched those guys, they were ready. But when you have other guys, and these are pretty highly, rated recruits, like a Romeo Langford, for example, or a Nasir Little, for example, guys like that, as much potential as they have, they decide to leave after 1 year and they play most of the year in the G League. And I totally understand that in the long term, I guess it could work because you're technically in line to get a contract a little earlier. You're also playing against professionals. But I hate to say it, like some guys are going to get exposed against playing when they play against professionals. If you stay in college, at least you have a year, years to develop and improve your game. And the pressure isn't as much when you're in college as it is in the NBA, because let's say you're a fringe guy that makes the G League and you're really playing for your job and you're playing for your contract every single time. Obviously everyone's situation is different. I understand that, and I'm in no position to really tell what these guys to do, to tell these guys what to do. But at the same time, what I will say is this, I don't know, I just think college basketball would be better if guys were encouraged to stay in school longer. And maybe with this coronavirus, I don't want to say it's a blessing in disguise for me because, obviously we've lost lives and, college basketball should be the last thing on everyone's mind right now in the big picture. I just do this show for fun and because I like talking to you guys about it. But maybe that does affect prospects possibly leaving early for the NBA. We know there are a lot of prospects that leave college early, and if they don't make the NBA, they sign contracts to play internationally. That could definitely be effective to anyone that was planning to do that this year that could possibly be a fringe draft guy. Maybe that is the determining factor in seeing if they decide to come back to school or not. So for a guy like Ayo Dosunmu, guy like Kofi Cockburn, with their physical attributes, with everything that they've done, Ayo the last 2 years, Kofi last year, I do think there is going to be an NBA market for them, but maybe they just want to come back to school, and play with Trent Frazier and Alan Griffin and that group of players. Andres Feliz graduated, but DeMonte Williams as well. There are going to be a lot of really good-looking players on this Illinois team next year, and I think when you look at it, they could be in a really solid spot. And it's funny because Ayo Dosunmu was really expected. It was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was going to be leaving and going to the NBA. That was really the consensus opinion throughout this whole college basketball season. And it's not like he didn't succeed and, live up to the expectations. He was really good. He was one of the best guards, not only in the Big Ten, but in all of college basketball. And if he comes back, I think that makes Illinois a top 10 team. I think that would make Illinois, the 2020 version of the Illini, probably the most talented team that Brad Underwood has ever coached. And we've seen in the past with this Illinois team, he led Oklahoma State to the NCAA tournament in his one and only year there when they really didn't expect to get there. And as I mentioned previously, he did just fantastic work at Stephen F. Austin. So Brad Underwood is a guy that could win. He could lead teams to the tournament. Illinois was in position to make the NCAA tournament this year before it got shut down. But when you look at the Illini, this could be one of the better teams in college basketball next year. When I'm projecting an early look at the top of the Big Ten, I think Iowa should be the favorite. I think they're right up there. It's not 100% confirmed that Luka Garza is going to be coming back to school, but everything I've heard tells me he will. Basically, every projection I've seen tells me he will, but you never know. But as of now, I'm going to assume he's back. They bring back C.J. Frederick, one of the best three-point shooters in all of college basketball. They also bring back a healthy Jordan Bohannon. Hopefully, he's a very experienced player, but missed a lot of time last year with an injury. And, they bring back Joe Toussaint, who played point guard last year. Both McCaffreys will be there, friends, two kids, Pat and Connor. I think Iowa, along with Joe Wieskamp, that's the other name I forgot to mention, one of the best, really good shooter, good combo guard. I think Iowa is going to be really good at the top of the Big Ten, assuming Luka Garza comes back once again. You also have the team that won the Big Ten last year. They were the number one seed in the Big Ten tournament if it would have happened. That was the Wisconsin Badgers, and they returned basically everyone. When you look at Demetric Trice, Brad Davison, Nate Reavers, that's a really good core. Michigan State, I know they lose Cassius Winston, but they bring back maybe Xavier Tillman, maybe Aaron Henry. Xavier Tillman is coming back. That's confirmed. I'm sorry. But they'll bring back Rocket Watts, Xavier Tillman, and Aaron Henry. That's a really good top three. You look at Purdue, brings back Stefanovic and Travion Williams. That's a good core. Eric Hunter and Aaron Wheeler as well. Rutgers, they're going to be feeling pretty good about themselves. They had their best season really in school history last year. And, they might have won a national championship. But it was last year, Rutgers was the best I've ever seen them as a college basketball fan. And they should be pretty good next year. They bring mostly everyone back. You also look at Indiana. Their expectations are high. Ohio State's expectations are high. So if Illinois could be good, man, the Big Ten is just going to be maybe even as good as last year. I don't know about that. I don't know if they'll have the depth, but Minnesota should be improved. Northwestern should be improved. There's some really good teams in this league, man, and it was really good last year. It's going to be really good this year, and Illinois is in a really good spot going forward because as long as Brad Underwood isn't getting caught by the NCAA, and I just bring that up because we all know what happened with Oklahoma State. We've spoken about that plenty of times on the show. Even though Mike Boynton is getting penalized, it's Brad Underwood that was the head coach of the Cowboys basketball program at the time, and he's the head coach of Illinois right now, and he didn't even get punished. So I don't know if it's unfair, but whatever, don't really want to talk about it anymore. But anyway, I think Illinois is going to be pretty good next year. If they could get one of those two guys back, and if they get both those guys back, I definitely think they're a top 10 team nationally going into next season.